responder pay. So I will turn it over to Kevin and Hanukkah. Did I say yeah? Hey, good morning.
Good morning,
y'all.
good morning, everybody.
So I will turn it over to you all for us to get started.
All right, well, thank you, Budget Chair Dotley. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys today and over the course of the next couple weeks. According to the schedule that we've talked about this morning, we're going to start by taking a look at a reappraisal analysis that Hanukkah and the housing team and finance we have been working on for a few weeks now. The purpose of starting here is just to give us all kind of a baseline of what things are looking like out there based on preliminary data that Hanukkah will explain how we got and its limitations and also its directional accuracy. So we're going to go slow. There's a lot of information in this one. We can camp out, at any time. So if you have questions, you can just ask them. I think it's best for this one just to, let's just have the conversation as we go, and we'll work our way through it. So I'm going to turn it over to Hanukkah. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done, Hanukkah, and looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, Council.
Good morning.
I'm honored to be here today to walk you through some of the data and findings from our analysis of the 2025 reappraisal. So this presentation is going to have two major parts. The first part is a fiscal analysis, and this is really understanding the historic property wealth that has been created over the last 4 years and what that might mean for the city's budget. The second half is going to be an impact analysis, and that's really a deep dive on the property level of what city tax rate scenarios might mean for household budgets and residents' tax bills on a monthly basis. Any change in property taxes will be felt, and so we want to make sure that there is clear data that you understand the impacts of this decision. So there's a very consequential decision before you in the coming weeks, and that's where to set the millage rate. But really, it's bigger than that. It's about kind of how the city will capture the historic growth that's happened over the last 4 years. And so the goal of this presentation is to lay the foundation for you to have these discussions, to give you access to the numbers, and to empower you to make a data-informed decision about where you would like to take the city with full understanding of the impacts and trade-offs. So that's where we're going. This study was conducted with parcel-level data from Hamilton County GIS, and this includes kind of the assessor's office numbers. So something to note is the assessor's office is still processing appeals. These are not final numbers. The finance department will receive those numbers later this year. But what this lets us do is get an early look as to what's coming. So individual numbers may move, but the overall trends are consistent, and it helps you understand kind of where we're going as you're making this decision. I'll say it right now, this is going to be a lot of numbers, so I will pause throughout to kind of make sure we're all together, give you a chance to ask questions. You also have a paper copy in front of you. I think Councilmember Noel needs one.
I do, thank you. Sorry for my tardiness.
That's all right. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And there's slide numbers in those paper copies, so if you want to kind of go back to something, you can just call out that slide number.
So real quick, I'm going to do a little color commentary here. Weston, can you speak to, so this data was pulled straight from the website, from the county assessor's GIS, pulling all the parcel level data. Can you speak to kind of the process historically of how, at the end of the whole thing, the county will transmit to finance the final data?
Right, so after they process all their appeals and gone through their processes, they'll send us the tax roll, which we'll get in September timeframe. So as Monica said, the numbers may change slightly, but again, not in a material way.
Yep. So based on what we're hearing from Marty is, yes, they're working through kind of individual appeals, but the volume of those appeals and kind of like, I guess I don't know how you would characterize maybe the success rate of
The
appeals.
outcomes.
Outcomes, are indicating to us that this data is, while subject to change, it's directionally accurate, and it's definitely in the ballpark.
And so this also gives us a much earlier look at what's coming than we typically get. Usually we're only looking at this in September. Let's get into the fiscal analysis. So the questions here are really how much wealth has been created since the last appraisal, and what does that mean for the city's revenue? We're going to start by talking about appraised value. And appraised value is a property's estimated market value. The county assessor's office exists to estimate these numbers once every 4 years. And so the last reappraisal was in 2021, and we've just had one in 2025. The result of that appraisal is Chattanooga saw a $14 billion increase in property wealth between 2021 and 2025. What that means is, in 2021, all the property in the city together was valued at $24.5 billion. And today that value is $38.5 billion. That's a $14 billion increase in property wealth. And to be clear, that's not just new development. That is existing property owners seeing an appreciation in the value of their property. That's the Chattanoogan family that bought a house for $200,000 and now it's worth $400,000, and they've got that equity they've created.
So that's
Yeah.
inclusive of new development.
Inclusive of
Okay.
new development as well, yes.
Is that commercial and residential?
Yes, that's everything together.
Thank you, I was just getting ready to ask that.
Yeah. Yes, and we're gonna break it down later
Thank
on,
you.
but for now, this is everything in the city.
Commercial and residential.
This is a historic increase in property value. We have never seen this much in a 4-year period, and you can see this on the graph here. The line goes whoop, straight up. This is incredible. This is success. This is our city showing indicators of economic activity, of new development. It's an indicator of desirability. Another way of looking at it is it's the investments this city has made in itself, reflected back to us in the value people place on being here.
One thing, can I say one more thing about
Yeah.
this chart? So we talked a lot when we were doing the budget about the cumulative inflation, the 22% from 2021. I do think it's interesting one way of thinking about this is the 33 and the 57, that's a 90% increase over roughly the same time period in property values. So I think that one of the things that you guys.
33 and 57, what are you, okay, those two numbers, got it.
Mhm.
Oh, my slide says 23.
Yeah,
and
sorry, I
43.
made some updates since this
Oh,
was sent
okay.
out.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing. I was
Okay,
like,
so I've, wait, so all these numbers are different, 28,
Yeah, so,
okay, hold
just
on.
to explain that difference, the numbers on there are from 24 to 25. I adjusted them so it's 21 to 25, so it takes the full appraisal cycle into account. Do we have an extra printout maybe?
It's
Is this
okay,
printout
I'm just gonna make notes.
consistent with that? Okay. Yeah, so the point that I was gonna make here is just to say, we have to think about the inflationary forces, but I think that it's important that we consider kind of the full macroeconomic ecosystem, and one dimension of that is that this does represent an increase in property wealth as one of the factors of what constitutes like economic well-being. It's just a thing to kind of think about in this context, if that makes sense.
And just to put some numbers to that, since 2008, total inflation is about 49%. Property value growth in that same time period is 82%. So our property values increase at nearly twice the rate of inflation. The property values increased in every council district. The light green bars here are the 2024 appraised values, and the dark green bars are the 2025 appraised values. Now, that's a big jump from one year to another. It's not that all that growth happened in 1 year, but because we're appraising on a 4-year cycle, last year's property values are actually adjusted back to that last 2021 appraisal. And so last year's values actually represent the market conditions of 4 years ago, plus the new development that's happened since. And it's important to keep in mind for the future. The values that we're seeing today, that's what we're working with for the next 4 years because of that 4-year appraisal cycle. We can also look at this in terms of percent change. Again, significant increase across the board. Specifically, districts 9, 2, and 5 have seen the greatest percentage change. Now, it's important to remember percentage change doesn't necessarily mean greatest dollar value increase, but it's another metric to look at. Any questions here before I move forward?
I do. What, Do you have any analysis from the county assessor's office why we've seen these? I know you talk about the macro economy and inflation, but when we get questions regarding this, I can't tell them an algorithm or any definitive information about why such a huge increase of change. Like in my district, we're probably the second largest, and I'm assuming blue, that 63% is District 9. I'm sorry, I don't, okay. Or, yeah, District 9. So do you have any comment or analysis on why we're seeing such large percentages of change, even in the overall increase at 57%, but just in how this was done?
Yeah, so the assessor's office is ultimately responsible for these appraisals,
Sure.
and so individual questions can be directed to them. But I think we see this reflected in sort of the home prices around the city. We've seen that home prices have increased 68% since 2019, and so this is consistent with the kind of values we see on the market, and the assessor's office is taking that into account when they're doing their appraisals.
But if I understand your question, Councilman, you're kind of asking, sure, but why? Like,
Yeah,
why are
so,
they so
yeah,
high?
I mean,
Yeah,
I get that, thank you. But I know you're not with the county assessor's office, but do you have an analysis, or, I mean, I could call and ask myself, I guess, but what is your analysis on why we've seen the percentage of change? Our home values in District 5 have gone up, we know that. But on the value appraised, why have we seen such a disproportionate jump, you know, through different districts? Do we have an analysis or?
So property values in generally are, and they're kind of an economic indicator of a lot of things. I think one is desirability, right? And so what these numbers are telling us is that relative to the previous 4 years, the city of Chattanooga as a whole has become even more desirable, right, of a place for people to be. I think that the home values are also a function of supply and demand, and so the demand on housing is greater than the supply, meaning that more people want to be here, which means that individual property owners can get more for their homes should they decide to sell them. I think that it's an indicator of people's view of the local economy, of a relatively healthy regional economy. People believe that there are opportunities to be had here, which feeds into their desire to be here. And so I think that there's a lot of economic upside that we can, and optimism that we can glean from these numbers, but it doesn't come without its challenges too, because it also tells a story of affordability concerns. It tells a story of, you know, well, how do you keep up with property values that are increasing at such a high and historic rate? And so I think that part of the conversation that we're having as we start these work sessions is, how do we balance the upside and the potential challenges, which we're going to talk about later on in this presentation and in subsequent ones. Is that kind of what you were asking?
Yeah, I just look at Councilwoman Burrs' district, which is my border district, and I'm going back again to the percentage change and the assessed value. And I'm just curious to know what type of economic analysis, maybe this is a question for the county assessor's office, like why such a huge variance between our districts, and we're border districts, as if the houses are relatively the same in 5, 9, and 6, because we're technically
Five's
only
more
divided
desirable.
by.
Five's more desirable.
If I was more desirable,
Has there
obviously,
been
it's
more
not as great as District 8
development? I wonder
apparently,
if it's
but.
driven by development too.
For sure.
Real quick,
Yeah.
you all,
Yeah.
I almost forgot I was budget chair, I apologize, so early in the morning,
Yeah.
apologize, but, if you could, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Councilman
It's okay.
Clark, if you are, finished, Madam, Chair has a question, then followed by Councilwoman Burrs and Councilwoman Knoll.
No, I'm good.
Okay,
No
all right.
question for me.
So, Councilman Clark, I'll just add a little of what I have learned over the last 5 years. doing work related to housing attainability and affordability. Like when I see the 63% in District 9, that 63% change in property value, what I have observed is a combination of new investment. So to Hannika's point, it does show that we've got areas of town that are ripe for investment. And so we had land that had no homes on it that now is home to larger multifamily units, townhouses, et cetera, which are driving value. But also something that we've seen, especially in areas that were historically very affordable, we have seen those houses flip. So perhaps, so I know in my district, some of my neighborhoods that have seen the greatest value increase, 143% plus, it's a neighborhood that genuinely, we have people that were the first and only owners of a home that was built in 1950, and they still live there, or they inherited from their parents, and so the property around them did not move very often. There weren't a lot of comps to drive change, and suddenly rental houses flipped, family homes flipped, and so previously what we would call naturally occurring affordable housing, where somebody's lived in that house for 40 years, their previous assessment was $150,000 literally. Now is $330,000 because homes around them have sold. And so I think that that's what we're seeing, especially in District 9. I'd be interested to better understand District 6 when I do see that overall District 6 has the greatest value of property in our entire
Right.
city. And I don't know if that's because of the commercial adjacent, but so much of that is also in District 4. That would be interesting because we haven't seen the rapid development in District 6 we've seen elsewhere, but we do have land, larger parcels. So I don't know about that.
Thank you.
And
And then,
I would also add that, Hanukkah asserted that this is a sign of, this is a great place to be, everybody wants to be here. But what I've also noticed in my studies is this is happening all over the United States. So it's not indicative of like Chattanooga's got a super secret special sauce. It's like this is a moment in the economy where the housing values have skyrocketed everywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilwoman Burrs?
To add to what you said, Chairwoman, the northern section of District 6, if you go to the tip of District 4, just above that, the northern section, a lot of that is Enterprise South.
Ah.
So, yeah. And I will just ditto what you said as kind of what I think is the difference between, say, a 31% and a District 5, yeah.
And I
Thank
could
you.
add on the other, I think that's totally true. District 6 also has the highest property values in the city, and so
It
the
does.
dollar amount change, and that doesn't include tax exemption,
Yeah.
so sort of key
Yeah.
thing we'll get into in a minute. The dollar amount change is actually more significant than in District 5, but the percentage change, because we're going from pretty big numbers, is more significant. So that's why we look at both indicators, because they can tell us different things.
Okay, thank you so much. And then Councilman Clark, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, and thank you, Chairwoman Hill, for that analysis, because we're looking at the numbers, and we know our districts. I know what's in her district. Still so mad that she got half of the airport and some of that stuff in there, but it does cause the percentage of change to deviate in comparison to a bordering district where the percentage of change is so different. Is there a way to do the percentage of change in property values with the commercial and the residential? Because I think that would tell a different story when you look at a suburban district like mine, where it's the majority of my district is residential. But the values are a little smaller in comparison to where it was in 2021 and to 2025, but the percentage of change is the highest, which I think is a good thing. Going to Council Chairwoman Hill's point is that we're seeing economic growth, possibly new construction, and I'd like to maybe get a little bit understanding what that looks like versus commercial versus residential, and the percentage of change in property values. So I think that would have been helpful and maybe would have told a different story, because we look at this as residential, and I'm like, oh wait, there are some of our districts that don't have as much commercial like mine. We're very residential, other than our major corridor, which is Highway 58, which is not an Enterprise South, an airport, or other things, so I'd be curious to see some data on
Yeah,
that.
I can definitely get that to you, and we'll touch more specifically on residential later in the presentation, so we'll get some of that.
Thank you so much, Hanukkah. And just my quick statement, and just kind of leaning in on a couple of spaces as we see, you said the increases were in District 5, 8, 9,
5 to
5, 2, and 9. Okay. When we think about some of the areas, have there been areas that have been historically undervalued, and maybe that's why they're seeing some of the increases? Now, I know, I like the point that Madam Chair made about, some people have been in their houses 30, 40 years, but then there are also times of gerrymandering when people were forced into certain neighborhoods and certain houses. So I would like, if you, in the next, just a follow-up email or something, what areas were historically undervalued, and then what does that value look like now? Like the time frame that you did here, from 2006 to 2026. So if we can just kind of get some of those core states, especially those we know that were gerrymandered, to look at those values. You don't have to discuss it. I'm just a follow-up email for me.
I appreciate
Okay.
it, yeah.
Thank you so much, honey. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
So now we're going to talk about assessed value. Assessed value is different from appraised value, which is the market value. Assessed value is a property's taxable value, the value that we as a city levy taxes against. And this factors in different property types. And this is because not all property in Tennessee is taxed at the same rate. And so to get the assessed value, what we do is we take the appraised value, that market value, and we multiply it by an assessment ratio. And there are different assessment ratios for different property types. So government buildings, religious buildings, educational, nonprofit, these are all tax exempt. And so their assessment ratio is 0%. Single-family homes, townhomes, condos, and farms are assessed at 25%. And then multifamily, commercial, and industrial property is all assessed at 40%. And so the appraised value times the assessment ratio gets us our assessed value. And then if we want to get the property tax bill, we multiply that assessed value by the city's tax rate, which last year was 2.25%. And that gets you to the tax bill. So just to walk through an example, if I own a house that's worth $400,000, that's my appraised value, my market value. I multiply that by 25%, so it's assessed at $100,000. And then to get to my tax bill, that $100,000 gets multiplied by the tax rate. And so my tax bill ends up being $2,250. So this is not super intuitive, and it is kind of important to understanding what the tax burden of our residents are. So any questions on how this is working? So you're probably curious, who contributes to property tax revenue in the city? 41% of the property tax revenue that we collect is non-residential, that's industrial, commercial. 34% is coming from owner-occupied residential or homeowners, and 25% is coming from non-owner occupied residential. And these numbers are coming out of the analysis we did, where we matched from the assessor's records the owner address to the property address. And when those two things don't match, that means the owner does not live at the property. So likely this is a rental unit, but there's a few other things that could be happening. It could be a second home, it could just be a vacant unit. So those things are all encompassed under this umbrella of non-owner occupied. And there are different proportions of owners and renters throughout the city. Citywide, 45% of housing units are owner occupied, and 55% of housing units are non-owner occupied. You'll see that by districts, this kind of changes. In some cases, that numbers don't add up to 100%. In that case, there's 1% unknown. So later on, I'm going to show you average tax bills for owner-occupied and non-owner occupied. So when you look at those numbers, keep in mind who's in your district. So the increased property tax translates to a 49% increase in the taxable value from 24 to 25. So that means all the property in the city is assessed at $7.2 billion. It's a much smaller number than the appraised value. And Today, that property is assessed at 10.7 billion. So we have $3.5 billion of additional property value that the city levies taxes against. Yeah.
Question, so going back to the 11, slide 11. So when you have the owner occupied versus non-owner occupied, that's any rental, whether it's a single family home, townhome, condo, things like that. And then you have a breakdown at all of what that 68% encompasses, like a further breakdown of like, okay,
I do, yeah. I'll make a note to show that. I've got it kind of at the end.
okay.
Are you keeping notes for
Yep.
me? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So let's talk about the city property tax rate, and this is simply the rate at which properties are taxed. It's also sometimes called the millage rate, so I may use those terms interchangeably. Property tax revenue is super important for the city, especially in the state of Tennessee. Property taxes fund over half of our budget, and it's one of the few places our city revenue can come from. Another place is sales taxes, and our residents pay a lot of sales tax, 9.25%, but 7 of that goes straight to the state, and we only keep 2.25% of the sales tax locally. The state gives some of it back. They give about 10% of what they take back. But most of the sales tax revenue our residents generate goes to other counties in the state. We also in Tennessee do not have a state income tax. So for local governments in other states, this is a common kind of source of revenue because the state will give some of that income tax back to cities, and it's a significant portion of their budget. The state contributions to our local budget are pretty minimal, and so to a large extent we're on our own. And so our revenue has to come from somewhere, and there's kind of 2 primary options. There's sales tax, but the state limits kind of how far we can push that rate, and then there's property tax.
What's that dotted line?
That is, so that whole section is intergovernmental revenues. 27% of it is sales tax, and then there's kind of some other source of intergovernmental.
Can I back up and just ask a question? This is about, going back to slide 11 again. Sorry, I got stuck on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, that number is kind of shocking to me that, you know, more people rent or non-owner occupied versus owner occupied. But I'm just wondering if there's a trend when there was a shift. I imagine at some point over the last 10, 15 years, there was a shift. And as we're asking for more information, I think it'd be interesting to see
Historical.
when that shift occurred.
Yeah.
And then I think I know the answer. This is probably an obvious. So you're saying 40% of the people, I'm using District 6 as an example, are contributing to the tax rate personally, and then 60% comes from the non-owner occupied. Like if I own a apartment complex or if I own a duplex, then I'm paying that tax rate.
And
Yes.
you're probably gonna push it straight into your rent.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
the renters are more susceptible to being displaced
Yeah.
Yeah.
than a person that has a 30-year
That's true.
mortgage that has it locked in.
Yeah, and this is a super important point. Renters are not paying taxes directly, but their landlords do,
yeah.
and
So
it's
then-
got to come from their
The
rent.
rent
So,
goes up,
yeah.
and they're already rent burdened.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Councilman
thank you.
Burrs, thank you. Councilman Clark?
Thank you, Chairwoman Dolly. To Councilwoman Burz's point, because I looked at her district again and saw that the balance of 40 versus 60%, 60% being non-owner occupied, but I also think about the number of commercial leases in her district.
So this is just residential.
This is just residential, okay, gotcha. And so that's a little shocking to me to see
It's
that,
very surprising
knowing
to me.
her district, sorry to keep coming into your district, but we're sister districts, and so, because you look at my district, which her home values appraised more than mine, and then you come into my district and I have essentially less renters. Anyways, I'm a data person, and to me, there's just something does not tell the story on why a district with more appraised value would have more renters. You know, I don't know. I'd be interested to have a very narrative conversation.
All right, any other questions? That's a great point.
Residential.
Okay, any other questions? All right, it's so informative. I didn't think I was gonna be like up for this, but
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, you guys are
All
so
right,
engaged.
yeah.
I love it. This is great.
Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
All right, so there's a bit of a question here.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. As the city becomes more prosperous, why can't we just keep the tax burden the same? Why can't we just keep everything flat? And it's really the question of why do cities capture the growth in property values? What do they do with that? There are three main things that local governments do with additional revenue from increased property values. The first one is simply keeping up with inflation. So you've probably noticed eggs cost a little bit more than they did 4 years ago.
Talk about
Sorry, we're not talking about chickens today, please. Please.
I should have said something on it.
Talk about wood.
Fire trucks cost more too. Maintaining a city park costs more too. It's more expensive today to do the same thing that we were doing 4 years ago. And if we keep the budget the same and we don't expand it to keep up with inflation, then actually we're making cuts every year. The second thing that cities do with the growth in property values is invest it back into the city in its infrastructure, so maintaining and upgrading infrastructure. If we have ambitions as a city of modernizing our sewer, or maybe expanding our sewer to other places, if we want to upgrade our roads to mitigate traffic, we need new revenue to finance those projects, unless we kind of want to keep the pace we've been keeping, which is behind what we've been needing. And so that's kind of the second thing that growth in property values can contribute to. And then the third item is meeting the increasing demand for quality services. And so as the city becomes more prosperous, the expectations of our residents have grown to be responsive, to be effective, to provide public services on par with the best mid-sized city in America. We need to fund those things. And so that's another thing that kind of that growth in property values goes into. Capturing growth created by the past investments in the city is a really natural way to fund future investment in the city. I mentioned this phrase, capturing growth, and it's a really kind of key concept because in Tennessee we have this law called the Truth in Taxation Law. And what that law does is it rolls back our tax rate to a certified tax rate. You've probably heard that phrase. And so what's happening there is in kind of other states, how this normally works is there's an increase in property values, the city's tax rate stays the same, and automatically there's an increase in local government resources. And so this is an automatic capture in growth. What the certified tax rate does is when there's an increase in property values, there's a decrease in our tax rate. The state decreases our tax rate in order to have the same local government resources. Now they carve out a little, we're allowed to capture kind of new development, but otherwise we are flat budget. And so this is a scenario where we capture no growth. So Tennessee is one of only 13 states that does this, that automatically rolls back the tax rate. And what that really does is it requires local leaders, it requires this body to make a decision if they will capture growth. Exactly. It takes something that's automatic in 37 states and it forces you all to come together, have a conversation, and make a conscious decision about the city you want to be, how you want to set yourself up for the next 4 years.
So I think it's interesting, and we're going to compare this map to another map later on, but just think about these states. Tennessee is an outlier when we get to later on relative to these other states in that our total tax burden or the effective tax rate in Tennessee is like nation leading. We're one of the lowest in the country. Whereas if you think about Texas, Florida, Georgia, even though they are one of these states that do not automatically capture growth, they do have some of the highest property taxes in the country as well. So it's just an interesting, we're an outlier in that way, which I just thought was an interesting
Do they have state income
observation.
tax?
Florida and Texas. don't.
Texas don't. Texas doesn't. Florida, Georgia does.
Georgia does.
So what does that mean for this city's budget? Last year, we had $7.2 billion of assessed value. That was multiplied by our old tax rate, 2.25%. And so that was $162 million of property tax revenue for the city. This year, there's $10.7 billion of total assessed value. The state has given us a certified tax rate of 1.55%. Now, they do let us carve out new development. So we've got a $5 million increase from the new property that's been developed in the last 4 years. But otherwise, our budget is flat, $167 million. Now, just for the sort of counterfactual, if we had held the tax rate at 2.25%, we'd be capturing $242 million in property tax revenue.
So is the 5 million for new development, are they paying the 2.25%?
That's in the certified rate. So when they set the certified rate, they kind of, they would normally set it so that it's totally equal. So we had 162 before, we'd get 162 after. But they factored in that new development, and so that's why it goes up slightly.
Is that an estimate or actual?
Of the property tax revenue?
No, the 5 million.
4.7 million is the kind of number, but this is still in
Gotcha,
that
yeah.
early
Yeah.
preliminary numbers.
Okay.
Chairwoman Dudley, can we pause here to, I guess, have a discussion or around some questions? Just,
If you got questions, go
okay,
ahead.
sure. So $242 million, if we had applied the unaltered tax rate, and going back to your previous questions about how we are a truth in taxation law, and it comes back to this body. And so this is, I guess, a legislative question or a parliamentary, I don't know what type of question this is, but I guess my question is that if the state drops the rate to 1.5, are we allowed to raise the rate back up to 2.25, and when?
That's what we're having these conversations.
Okay, and that's what I thought. And so, but what, and I think this would be the
So
question for the
our
chair.
body sets the tax rate.
Correct.
We could make it 1%. We can make it whatever we want.
But I guess my question is that after the state comes in and enforces the certified tax rate, we can come in behind them at any period of time and raise the rate back up to 225, and is there a ceiling for that?
2.75.
So that is codified, Phil, that we can only raise the rate to 2.75?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't hear you down here, but, okay, thank you.
So the ceiling is 2.75%. Yes, I'm sorry, Councilman Clark, followed by Councilman
Okay,
Burns.
thank you, that's it, thank you.
Oh, that's it?
Well, it's not, but I think,
This- Okay.
I will yield because I think there might be some,
Well, I
Okay.
just have a follow-up question. So, Phil, does that mean we can only go 0.5 or 5% over the state rate? Is that what the rule
Unless the
is?
state law has changed, yes.
And
So
what
it's not 2.75, it's just 0.5 above?
No, there is currently here in Hamilton County, we have 2.25%. And I believe the entire amount is 2.75. I may be confused here today, but I just did several memos about that last week.
So it's an actual percentage
Yes,
set, not above and beyond the state rate?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, it was
Thank you.
nine, yeah, 9.75 is the max.
of the
for the sales tax.
That's sales tax though.
Yeah,
That's sales tax.
sales tax. Okay,
This is property tax.
okay.
So that's
We've
not-
had 3% in the past.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've changed the law since, but
I didn't think that there was a cap, Phil. I
Oh,
think
there
that's,
is.
I think it's something that the state legislature has been considering, but I do not think that they have taken that action yet.
Gotcha.
You start, it's not.
Okay, so Phil, you'll give us
Yes, ma'am.
a Phil answer in
Yes,
a little
ma'am.
while. Okay,
Clarify.
any other,
Clarify what rates are for this presentation. Does that make
Yeah, I think everybody's tracking with that. So our currently, the certified tax rate is 1.55, and then this body has the ability to institute what's called an adopted tax rate of any figure.
Of any figure.
And so lower or higher, and the reason that we're anchoring against 2.25 is simply because that's what the previous adopted tax rate has been for the last 4 years.
okay, all right. So thank you so much. And then Councilwoman Noel, followed by Councilwoman Burrs.
I'm good.
Oh, you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh,
I-
okay. That's all right.
Thinking, processing here, sorry. I
Yeah,
keep
it's
my
a lot,
hands
it's a
down.
lot of information to process.
Yeah.
Good information,
Information, yeah.
especially being the legislative body, and this is what we are responsible for. It's very good information. Councilwoman Noel.
So the 1.55 is what the state says it has to be.
That is the certified tax rate to equalize for municipalities. So what the state is preventing by having this, this system of certified tax rates, they're preventing automatic capture for local governments of increasing property values, and they're forcing these conversations that we're having now.
Gosh, that makes sense.
Kevin, do you mind if I just clarify?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, sales tax and property tax, you heard about a cap there. There is a cap on sales tax, 9.75. We're not quite there yet. That's a separate conversation. Some cities do that, some cities don't, or the cap, that's not what we're talking about today. Property tax, the state legislature has tried 2 years in a row to cap that at a percentage increase from the certified tax rate, right? So that did not go through, that has not gone through, that's been lobbied heavily, and we would do that again. However, I would point out that certain municipalities in our area, right, it becomes sort of cause celebrate for this. So there is, while there is no cap, there's sort of an implicit cap, and that you don't want to be the nail that sticks out the highest, because that is the one that will be hammered down. So there's not really a cap on what you guys can do. Currently, you were free and clear, but there is a judgment on there.
All right, Councilwoman Noel, did you have?
No, I'm done. That was my question, to say if that was the state,
Okay.
that's making a.
And, so I got Councilman Burrs, followed by Councilman Clark, and welcome, Councilman Elliott. Also, I do wanna note that Councilman Henderson is watching online. And I've asked him if he have any questions. I will, be more than happy to ask, so
I
that
think Jeff's watching from Antigua.
he,
He
I
told me it's the beautiful shores of Antigua. so
surely he would.
That's where I want to be doing this budget.
Watch this on YouTube later.
Right.
Times
When
the
you get back.
speed.
Right.
If you really wanted to.
Right. Councilwoman Burns, followed by Councilman Clark, and then we'll move forward, with the rest of the presentation.
Okay, I just want to clarify that the 1.55 keeps everybody's tax rate right now as it was last year, so.
No.
They literally drop it.
No. So it is across the entire municipality.
Yeah.
There was a total dollar figure that was collected via property tax. What this 1.55 ensures is that across the entire municipality, but for that 5 million of new development, the same will be collected.
Same will be collected, but
doesn't-
mine could change.
That's exactly right.
By the mere fact that my assessment went up.
That's
And I've
right.
got, I've got those
A third will
numbers.
stay the same and a third will go
Right,
up.
okay. So my property taxes, I'm just using myself as an example, my property taxes could go up or they could go down.
Depending on what your
Depending on where-
home was
okay.
appraised.
So if citywide it went up a certain percentage, if yours went up over that percentage or under that percentage, you would pay more or less. So
Gotcha,
that's
okay.
And I've got
based-
numbers to speak to that going
Okay,
forward, so
okay,
we can
thank
look
you.
specifically at that.
All right.
Okay, and last round, Councilman Clark, and then Hanukkah will move forward.
Yeah, thank you. But going back to the certified tax rate and the difference in the income it brings in for the city, I mean, that's an $80 million difference that's not going into our coffers. So going back to the discussion I'd like to have is that, and I don't know, maybe this is a question for the chair, but the purpose of this is to consider, thank you for the analysis, thank you, but the business is that in looking at what we lost and not adopting this certified, or not going with the 2.25, this gives us an opportunity to do an analysis to consider that in this legislative session.
That is correct. Remember, the whole purpose of this is for us to assess where we are, because we've already passed a flat
Sure.
budget based on that based on what, 2.25 tax rate?
No, so there was a placeholder, but I think
1.55
it's now,
tax rate. So
is
we
it 1.55? Or what did we adopt?
adopt.
So there is no rate in the actual ordinance, it's kind of the.
Right.
So we tried to keep
Pending.
The revenue projection is based on.
Right, so we tried to keep it as flat as possible with the 167 million, so we tried to keep it as flat as possible. These budget education sessions are to say, yes, do we need to alter, that tax rate to address first first responder pay. That's what this is about. This isn't about anything additional or anything like that. This really is about our sworn employees and seeing if we can, what we need to do to address their pay, because we didn't address it in the budget that we just passed. We only did non-sworn. So these sessions are specifically about
Sure.
sworn pay. But you do have the point in that, some of the growth could be used for other things.
But in addressing that, if we needed to capture the growth that we were not allowed by state, this body would have to institute.
We would have to raise taxes.
Okay,
Raise taxes,
gotcha.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I guess philosophically, would that be something that after these budgets, educational sessions, that we would have to consider as a body on the
Because
agenda?
we are considering an amendment, which will be in essence, looking at that tax rate.
An amendment to the tax rate.
An amendment to our current budget that will address that first responder pay.
So,
I'm asking a different question. And I get that's an amendment to our budget.
It would
But
adjust
if we
that
want
tax
to
rate.
address those budget shortfalls, I'm looking at an $8 million difference. So I guess my question is that at what point will this body have the opportunity
Yeah.
to consider, and I guess this could be a question for the chairs as far as the agenda setting, if that's the desire, I don't know, but.
So I think I can help.
We have a schedule set.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so this is what all this is about. So
Gotcha.
in essence, we're addressing it now.
Gotcha.
Okay. I hope I.
No, I just needed a definitive,
We have 3 budget education sessions the next 3 weeks.
Sure.
And then in that process, on week 3, we will discuss our individual council ideas and then the administration idea for what this amendment should look like and how much revenue we want to raise versus any other changes we want to
Right.
make to the budget. And then it will go for a public hearing. And then it's on the agenda for the 26th of,
I believe so, 26 and.
for the first read, the
On the
26th, and September 6th for the second read.
For the budget amendment, which
Which would set a new tax rate.
Thank you,
If
that's
we
what I
choose
needed
to
to know.
do that.
Thank you, I was like,
Point of information.
Okay,
Thank
so,
you, and
yes,
Chairwoman Hill.
yes, point of information, yes, sir.
So, just to clarify, you guys aren't coming to us, excuse me, Madam Chair, the administration's not coming to us with their proposed, tax rate and for us to consider. They want us to consider this collectively.
No, so, once we get through the
Through
process of having these conversations, just so that we all are operating from the same information, the administration is going to put forward a proposal for your consideration.
Okay.
The purpose of these sessions, though, is to try to find alignment around what collectively we want to do, knowing that our primary objective is to true up first responder pay. But we want you guys to have all of the information. So the purpose of this analysis is to just kind of like level set and give you an idea of what the upper threshold possibility would look like, what doing nothing would look like, and then as we continue through this particular presentation, you're gonna see what different scenarios might look like, again, just to build our collective kind of knowledge base of what the options before us are as we continue the conversation.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So these are all just education sessions leading to what we gonna do. Yeah.
When was
That's what we
when was
know.
the last tax increase?
In 21.
2021.
Yeah, so you use this,
And point of order on it, so keep in mind, we cut the rate 4 years ago as well, right? And so that's, I think, that's what you're getting into here.
But we
So-
captured
Yep.
So when
growth.
we use the word tax increase or tax cut, the rate has steadily fallen, right? And I think you're gonna see that in this slide, so with that, I'll hand it back to Monica.
so any other questions around this great discussion? Okay, so,
All right. So, what have we done in the past? What we're looking at here, if we look at this chart on the right, the orange squares is where the certified tax rates have come in on each of our reappraisal cycles for the last 20 years. And the blue line is our adopted tax rate. So that's the decision that this body made with the certified tax rate. In 2009, there was significant growth in property values. I don't know if y'all remember 2008, 2009, we had a housing boom. And so 2009 is when that came crashing down.
Really had.
And the council decided to adopt the certified rate that year. The next year, and this was a sort of outlier, the council decided, nope,
Not now.
The council decided to raise the rate actually higher than it had been before. So you can raise taxes outside of a reappraisal year, but it would kind of put that conversation outside of this one, which is how are we capturing the growth that's happened?
So that goes to your question, Councilman Clark, that you could do it, the
Yeah.
council can do it at any time.
Gotcha.
But typically, this is happening when the reappraisals happen, again, because the state law forces us to have this conversation about where we want to be. And so, since then, we've captured growth every time. There's been a little stepping down each year, but we're maintaining a tax rate around 2.25%. And you'll see the last square there with the dashed line is this year. It's lower than anything we've seen in the past even 30 years. And so that's a reflection of the value created, but it also sort of puts us at a real decision point. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, so this is lower than previous years,
Mm-hmm.
but we have higher values, is that right?
That's right. It's really, there are a lot of stories that these numbers are telling. One of them that I maintain is that it's really telling a story about the devaluation of the dollar over time.
It is. 'Cause I'm like, I mean, 'cause that's what I'm like, what is this? Okay, so.
We're printing rubles.
We are.
And what you can also look at it is like the more properties values go up, the more the tax rate has to come down to keep us the same.
Keep us the same, but again, doesn't necessarily account for the actual inflation. We have numbers for inflation.
And I got a number for that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
She's got a number.
I got a number for you.
Monica is thorough.
Okay.
So this is another way of looking at this. Historically, we have captured growth. And so the orange line, this is one we've seen before. These are our total appraised values as a city. And the scale for those numbers is on the left side of this chart. The blue dashed line, this is the city's tax revenue. The scale for that's on the right. And so historically, every time the value of our properties stepped up, our city budgets kept up with it. And you'll notice that between the appraisal years, our revenue kind of increases somewhat. We've got some gradual growth. That's new development. That's what's kind of causing that growth. But this second blue line is really important because it's adjusting for inflation. And so that slow growth we're seeing in between is actually flattened when we account for inflation. It's eating up that slow growth from development. And we're not really collecting new revenue to expand services. We're just paying for inflation with it. Even more important, if you look at 2021 onward and that second blue line, inflation's been really high the last few years. And so that means that we have actually seen our, in real terms, budget falling. So we've been trying to do the same, or really we've been trying to do more with less every year for the last 4 years. So if we were to accept the certified rate, those blue lines would kind of stay where they are, and we would create a really big gap between the market reality and the city's resources. And unless we come back and raise taxes outside of this conversation on capturing growth, the gap's only going to get bigger over the next 4 years. And so really what that means for the city is for the next 4 years, there would be no new money to upgrade infrastructure or to build new community centers. There would be no new money to improve services or do the things residents may be asking of you. In fact, with inflation, accepting the certified tax rate would mean trying to do more with less every year, basically cutting services every year. And ultimately, this is the conversation the state law is forcing you all to have. It is asking what kind of city you want to be, how you want to set yourself up for the next 4 years. And it's not an easy decision. I don't envy any of you, but it is important to be eyes wide open. That's why you have these sessions, and we're really talking through all the data.
And Councilman Clark, and then I had a question as well.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a statement or a question or a statement, but I'd like maybe some responses from it. Because as I'm sitting here thinking about previous slides, when we look at the percentage of change and the property value, in my district, you know, I had the second highest, right? And so when we talk about who's paying for growth, like who will see the out-of-pocket impact first, right? And so you look at my district in 2021, you guys are telling me in 4 years, our home values increased almost more than 50%.
Yeah.
And so you have a district like mine, as we consider the certified tax rate, where essentially I'll be going to my district and saying, our property went up, which is great for growth, right? But the out-of-pocket cost, as it goes into our coffers to pay for those things, seems like it could be disproportionately placed in certain areas. And I'm stating that in the form of a question because my concern is, with some of our housing, our council chair is very helpful in doing these type of narrative analysis to help us go back and explain this to our districts. I get that we've had increase. I get how these increases help us pay for first responders. But I'm just very concerned that as we consider raising taxes, lowering taxes, who does the burden fall on?
Yep.
I think these are exactly the right questions to be
Okay.
asking, and we're gonna answer them.
We're going to answer.
All right, and that's okay. I just wanted to put that out there I know this is educational, but this is the only time we get to discuss legally. Not that we do it illegally, but I'm saying is that I need this analysis. Thank you for the slide.
It's the second half of the presentation.
Okay, so
We're even
I'm getting
getting
ahead of myself, but I just that's what's in the back of my brain as I'm looking at these numbers.
For sure, and I think that that's part of the tricky thing about percentages, because you have to remember that, referencing previous slides, it's percentages against each district's baseline.
Yeah.
But a percentage is going to be different depending on what the baseline is.
What the actuals are.
Yeah, so we're about to get into actual numbers, and I just want to state that we're an hour in, we had 2 hours, and we're not halfway through the presentation.
Okay,
So we probably need to pick up the pace a little
Okay.
bit, and we're gonna get into, I think, a lot of slides that are gonna answer your questions.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's go ahead and get through, the bulk of these presentations. Councilman Elliott, I do have you down for the next question once we get through, this section. Well, it's questions in here at the end, so.
Yeah.
We'll do that. So just hold your questions and then we'll get to that answers. We wanna move through this.
So before we move on, I just wanna say one more thing. So,
Oh, housing impact analysis.
yep, so what we're talking about here is the question, obviously, we are sensitive to the impact on individual households, right? And we're balancing that with the reality of, well, what are we learning, or what do we know about Chattanooga from what has happened with property values? What does it say about future demand on resources and on infrastructure and on the things that the city has to continue to provide? And what do we need to do to ensure that we are properly resourced, not only now, but over the next 4-year cycle? And so that's kind of where we're going. And then what impact would it have at different increments of potential scenarios on individual households?
Yeah, very well said. So let's get into these city tax rate scenarios, and the rest of this presentation is going to be a lot of numbers, so bear with me. I'm going to narrate a bit, but if you want me to just stop so you have some time to look at the numbers, we can do that too. I've prepared different city tax rate scenarios. On the left end of all these charts, you're going to see the 1.55% certified tax rate scenario. That's the capture zero growth scenario. And as you see, there is a slight increase in the city's resources. That's the money from new development. On the other end, we're going to have the 2024 tax rate. That's the 2.25% that we had last year, and that would lead to an $80 million increase in the city's resources. This is the capture full growth scenario. As we've discussed before, this council can set the tax rate wherever. So I've put some in between, and you can obviously go lower than the certified tax rate, higher than the 2024 tax rate, but I've kind of limited this to the zero growth and full growth scenarios. The decision before you is to decide which of these millage rates will be set and to decide the resources the city will have to work with. So just to get a sense of how the tax rate relates to revenue and to residents, as a sort of benchmark in your mind, for every 0.01% increase in the millage rate, the tax rate, it's about $1 million extra revenue for the city. And for residents on a monthly basis, it's an average of a 60-cent tax increase, or $7.20 per year. And so not all that tax is coming from residents, it's coming from our industrial property, our commercial property, but From here on out, we're really going to be talking about the impact on households and what we are asking from residents in these different scenarios. So we've arrived at the second half of the presentation. As you all know, I work on the affordable housing team, and it's important to understand the actual impact of the city tax rate on household budgets.
And just real quick, Hanukkah, and I
Yeah.
apologize, Councilman Henderson did have a request.
Yep.
I just wanna make sure I put it in. He would like the administration to verify the average percentage of tax increase per 4-year period since 1990, since we started as a government.
Got it.
All right, we got you, Chair, Councilman Henderson. All right, thank you so much.
So, in this section, we're going to do a deep dive on the incremental impact of the different tax rate scenarios on household budgets across the city. I've broken it down into 3 groups. So first we're going to start with all the households together. Then we're going to look at just owner-occupied and then just non-owner-occupied. And just as a note, so far we've just been talking about city taxes, but residents are paying city and county taxes together. And so all the numbers from here on out are city and county taxes together. The county has accepted the certified rate. They've already started that process. And so half of our residents' tax bills is kind of frozen. So that also kind of cushions the impact of any city tax rate change.
Important to note, the county's certified tax rate was 151. The city's certified tax rate is 155.
You guys are making a good argument for us to increase it, I think, huh?
And that's the lowest tax rate since World War II for the county.
So,
And my residents are wondering what they get from the county. Every meeting that they have with the county commissioner, they're like, why am I paying?
So,
Sorry,
they
off
should.
topic,
Off topic,
sorry.
yes. So, if we can, just keep the question, we're trying to get through the presentation, so if you just jot down your questions.
I can remember them, so I'll jot them down.
Jot them down. Thank you so
Peanut
much.
gallery over here, I'll be quiet.
This part will be a little quicker because we're just
Okay.
cycling through some numbers.
Okay.
So let's start with all households. So in this section, the numbers are going to be on a per housing unit basis. So for those multifamily properties, I took the total tax liability and divided it by the number of units. So we're looking on a per unit basis. And this includes both homeowners and renters. Now, we've already discussed renters are not paying taxes directly, but their landlords do, and that's coming out of their rent. So tenants are still contributing to our city tax revenue, and it's important to consider the impact on them. For each section, I'm going to show you 3 charts. First, the average tax bill. Remember, this is city and county together. And then the average incremental tax increase yearly and then monthly. So this chart shows the average annual household tax bill. This is 2024. You see it for each council district, and then the blue box is showing us our city average. And then underneath that, you'll see the impact to the city's budget. Adding in the certified tax rate, and then on the other end, the hold the rate scenario, and everything in between.
I like that. Okay.
So going to your question earlier, Councilwoman Bird, you can see in the, well,
Sorry.
yep, so you can see under the 155 scenario that there's a functional increase at the 155 level on average.
And I can speak to that. So if we look just at the increase, because it's easier to sort of understand from this perspective, even if we accept the certified tax rate, the average resident tax bill is going to be higher. And the reason for this is even though the total city revenue is the same with the certified tax rate, the value of residential property increased more significantly than the value of commercial property. So residential property is making up a greater share of the tax revenue that the city is collecting.
So this is an annual number.
This is an annual number, yeah, and let me pop the monthly on there. So even if we accept the certified rate, residents will see an increase. Really important to understand, really important to communicate to residents. There will be an increase in their property taxes in any scenario. There's no scenario where they stay the same. So on a monthly basis, the average household tax increment would be between $13 and $54. And you can see underneath the impact to the city's budget in each of those scenarios.
So that's really interesting numbers, the way that starts to move.
So,
But we're,
jot down, if you had to jot down the question.
All right, I'll get through these and
Y'all
then we
gonna be
can
going
really
back
dig
to some
in.
slides, so.
That's all
If
right.
you want us to jot them down, just be prepared to go back to the slides.
So let's look at only owner occupied now. So again, just on a methodology note, these are properties where the owner address matches the property address. It includes single-family homes, condos, and townhomes. It does not include single-family homes that are rentals. So this is about 45% of housing units in the city. The average tax bill citywide ranges from $2,800 to $3,439. And on average, homeowners carry a higher tax burden than renters. This has to do with the value of the property that homeowners own. So a component of this is location. There's more homeowners in higher value districts. And the size and quality of the homes. They tend to be bigger, they tend to be fancier. So a 3,000 square foot home is worth more on the market than a 700 square foot apartment. So that's part of why homeowners are paying more property taxes. With property taxes, you pay proportionate to the value of the property. So owner-occupied homes tend to be of higher value than rental units. A big fancy house is going to have a higher property tax bill than an apartment. Something to remember too is the reason tax burden is up for homeowners is because home values are up, and that is wealth that has been created for those homeowners. Since 2021, there's been $5 billion of homeowner equity created in the city of Chattanooga. So in terms of the incremental tax increase, it ranges citywide from $161 to $800. And just a note, we do have programs for homeowners who are low-income seniors that freezes their taxes or gives them property tax relief. So we do have some programs available for those at the lower end of the spectrum. And on a monthly basis, we're looking at an average homeowner tax increment of $13 to $67. And last section here, we're going to talk about non-owner occupied. Just a methodology note again, these are properties where the owner address does not match the property address, so the owner does not live at the property. It includes single-family homes, condos, and townhomes that are rentals. It includes duplexes and multifamily. This is about 55% of the housing units in the city, and the per-unit tax bill is calculated by taking the property's total tax bill and dividing it by the number of housing units. So
it's important, this is a per unit number.
per unit number. Again, renters do not pay property taxes directly, but their landlords do, and property tax expense is included in the rent. Landlords are factoring this in, and actually most landlords preemptively raise rent at least 2% per year to account for the fact that insurance, property taxes, maintenance, all of those things get more expensive. And so the average renter tax bill is about $1,000 lower than the average homeowner tax bill. It ranges from $1,693 to $2,080. These properties are smaller, they're older, they're in less expensive neighborhoods. That's part of why they are taxed at a lower value. The annual increase ranges from $146 to $533. Something to note, most of this increase is sitting in single-family rentals and small multifamily. The large multifamily buildings did not increase in value as much as the single-family homes, and so their taxes are a lot more kind of flat, so the real increase is in those single-family rentals. And on a monthly basis, we're looking at an increase from $12 to $44. And so there's a question in here of would rents go up as a result of our decision on the millage rate? And of course, we don't know what any individual landlord will choose to do, but to a certain extent, landlords have already accounted for the increased value of their property in the rents they're charging. Rents have gone up 47% since 2019, and those go up in part to anticipate increase in expenses. So $44 a month, even if we in the hold the rate scenario, is not so significant that the last 4 years of rental increases didn't kind of already cover that.
They've already been displaced.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. This is my last slide. So to kind of put things in perspective and come back to this idea that we looked at when we were looking at the city budget The revenue has to come from somewhere. And so what this chart does is it adds up all the different ways state and local governments tax their residents. Income tax, property tax, sales tax. And when you combine those together, Tennessee has the third lowest tax rate in the entire country. We are behind Alaska and we are behind Wyoming. And you could say maybe we're getting what we pay for. Other states fund their infrastructure and their services from state income tax. Texas doesn't have an income tax, but they've got higher property taxes to make up for it. If you want good infrastructure and quality services, that money has to come from somewhere. So as you're having the conversations over the next few weeks and trying to understand kind of how much growth you'd like to capture, even in the full growth capture scenario, we are still far, far behind the resources we have to invest the city compared to other cities. And even within our state, we're behind what Knoxville has per capita, we're behind what Nashville has per capita. And so that's why this really comes back to the central question of what kind of city do we want to be? How do we want to set ourselves up for the next 4 years? And really, what are your residents asking for? That's it for the slide.
And I think that this is a super, going back to the previous map, right? Just thinking about total tax burden, right? I think that we have to just, it's important to zoom out and think about aggregate impacts. So not irrespective, but what we decide to do in terms of making smart decisions about properly resourcing the city of Chattanooga for not only today, but for what we think tomorrow might look like, we are not at risk of creating an unfavorable tax environment for our residents, generally speaking. We live in a very favorable tax climate where our city, our state rather, very friendly business climate. And so I just think it's an important context to keep in the back of our collective minds.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we appreciate this. This is the first half of the presentation, right?
That was the whole thing.
All
We're
right.
done.
All right, so we'll start out where we left off. Councilman Elliott.
Yes, I have some questions. Is there, and this is maybe a broader question, is it possible to have the assessor to explain the drastic increase this year compared to last? I don't know if that's an authority that this council can make a request. I don't know if it's for Phil or Chairwoman Hill.
We could invite him.
Okay.
Yeah, I know he speaks of community engagements and different things. And he came and actually spoke to administration a couple months ago about certified tax rates, and he's willing to come and talk to you guys or talk to
Yeah,
anyone.
he spoke to us last time we did this.
Yeah, is that something we could do?
Sure.
Happily.
Is it possible to have these annual tax bills separated from city and county?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would like to see the numbers just for the city.
sure.
I understand what you were doing with the county too, I just wanna kind of strip it off. And I think the last question I have, how do you guys accurately, differ between the tax bills from homeowners to renters? Like what data are you guys pulling from to accurately depict that?
Yep.
I get the homeowner piece,
Yep.
Yeah.
cause we have that. But like, how are you accurately depicting that for renters?
Yeah, I had the same question when we first jumped into this, so
Yeah.
you want to kind of re-explain that
Yeah,
one?
so this study was conducted with parcel level data from Hamilton County GIS. So I'm able to see the 2024 assessed value and 2025 assessed value for every property in the city. I then filtered out residential property and looked at the owners and the property address. So in cases where the owner address matched the property address, the owner lives at the property, that's an owner occupied unit. In cases where the owner address did not match the property address, that's a non-owner occupied unit. So those are primarily renters, but they can also be second homes or vacant units. I can't really make a determination with the information I have on specifically what it is, but a large part of those are renter occupied units.
Okay. And how do you determine how much burden is pushed off on these renters? What data are you using to determine that?
That's a great question as well. So we do not know what individual landlords' choices or behaviors are. All we can show is how the landlord's tax burden on a per unit basis has changed. And we understand that that money typically comes from tenant rents. So that is the average change in the tax bill for that housing unit, more so than like the exact number a renter would be paying.
So are you assuming that that change is automatically gonna be pushed on the renter? Okay, so is there much daylight between what it looks like to be an owner compared to a renter? Like either way, the person who lives there is gonna be responsible for that change. So is that accurate?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And on slide 10, Councilman Elliott, it gives you kind of the percentage of, single-family townhomes, condos, and farms.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that.
so yeah, that kind of,
Yeah, I studied this last
That
night.
as
I saw
well.
that piece. Thank you.
And on average, it's higher on owner-occupied properties.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're more valuable.
Yes. Thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
thank you so much. Councilman Elliott, Councilwoman Burrs, anyone else before Councilman Clark? Okay, Councilwoman Burrs.
So the two questions I have, so property values have increased. How does that compare to household incomes? Is there a, let me do a comparison there. And then remind me, and this is for anybody because my brain is in a fog, what amount are we trying to get to for first responders? What's the value?
So what we had talked about when we were sitting down during budget, I anchored pretty hard against 20. 23 would be the number total that we would need. Backing out the 5 that we already set aside, we would be going after 17.5.
Okay, to get to the level that we need to get to, 17.5.
Mill?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all, Chairwoman, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Burrs. Councilman Clark.
Thank you. Can we, I'm not sure
Yes.
if the slides correspond with in here, but on 30, on slide or page 30, where it talks about the annual tax bill of the owner occupied, I'd like to go back there, and then I have a second question regarding county taxes. So, just so I'm understanding the millage rate for 2024, right now, if you lived in my district, whatever your house is currently appraised at, in 2024, on average, you paid about $1,800. If we adopt whatever these tax rates, this is on average, not specific, because recognizing that everybody can go up, this is what could potentially be out of pocket for residents if we adopt either one of these, okay. So this is their out of pocket
On average.
on average, okay. So the other, so that's owner occupied, and so, but the household average tax bill, this included city and county, okay, see so what's the difference between, on the slide 26, what is the difference between the average household annual tax bill versus the average homeowner annual tax bill?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the average household annual tax bill is taking both the owner occupied and non-owner occupied together. And the homeowner is just owner occupied.
Gotcha. So that's combined home occupied and non-occupied. And my last question, Chairwoman Dotley, is we talked about county taxes, and this is just a point of information. So the county, and I know we're the city, but I just need to know what the county's doing. So, because we pay city and county, and the city pays a lot of the county bills because we're the city. The city is the county. And I would say that publicly when we ask those questions, what have you done for us lately? I forgot, this is recorded. I forgot these are not private meetings. I'm still adjusting it to like.
You are fine. It's a question. You gotta represent your constituents as well.
Yeah, but, and this is just a point of information, I think Chairwoman Hill mentioned this, is that, so the county has has chosen to adopt their certified tax rate, which is 1.5.
1.5.
1.51. And so, but they also have the ability to come back as a body to raise their county taxes along with us. So if I lived in District 5, in our city, and this is point of clarity, point of information, the county is going to raise potentially, or we're potentially considering it, we will get hit twice. Is that correct?
Maybe to clarify, so the county has already made their decision for this year.
How do we know that? Was that a vote, or is that just a proclamation by the
They've already
mayor?
adopted a tax rate. for
Okay, I did not, I don't follow counties.
So they
Maybe I need to go with my county commissioner,
They adopted the certified rate.
Yeah. So they're
which
done.
is, okay, so they're done.
So they're done.
Okay,
They also are seeking more and more revenue from the city of Chattanooga as a way to not raise county taxes.
Yes.
So they would like us to pay more for schools than we already pay. They'd like us to
Gotcha.
pay more for fill in the blank. So they are not having these hard discussions. They're allowing us to have these hard discussions, and then they would like to take our revenue.
gotcha. Thank you for, I love how you, like, I can always count on you just to make it plain for me. We're on the same
Try to be
page.
at every table I'm at, so if the mic's on, I'm okay.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because I need it to make sense. You know, I appreciate the budget analysis, but for us as a legislative body, I need it, because we're getting these questions, and I'm like, oh no, I ain't an economist, but this makes sense now. So thank you for the presentation, because I think as we conclude the budget educational sessions, you know, these are the decisions that, as we look at the impact, the analysis impact on our districts, you are essentially asking me to put a tax burden, which I don't mind a tax increase, but I also believe in equity, which I know is the boogeyman word sometimes, but when you're asking certain districts who have been appraised differently in a 4-year period to come out of pocket more, regardless of what your house is, that there is a concern of disproportionality for me. And so I have to ask these questions, you know, if we raise, whoever, the county or the city, you know, I asked the county, what have you done for me lately? And if we do the city, I would be asking the city, what are you going to do for me? Because if I support whatever the administration's recommendations would be, you know, I know some of that will include the 17.5 million gap we're trying to close for first responders. But in districts like mine, I'd be curious to know that if we're coming out of pocket at a higher percentage rate from what we were paying 4 years ago, you know, I'd like to make sure I'm having a very robust conversation with the administration about what comes into my district if you expect me to support a tax rate. And so I just want to say that publicly, because this educational session should have all of our legislative wheels turning about what we will be prepared to do, Councilwoman, Chairwoman Hill, after we conclude this. As she's mentioned, we will be tasked with that consideration. Is that correct? Okay.
That's correct.
All right, so I just want to make sure I'm reading, because I depend on y'all's data. And I'd be curious to know, last question, in our budget hearings, because we talk about county versus what they're asking us versus what we get, is there an analysis that I could receive, and maybe there's one in preparation, that where we can start looking at like what we get from the county versus what we don't get from the county based off what taxes, like, do we have data on that currently?
We can get that for
Okay.
you. Well, the administration, I'm sure they are fantastic
Yeah.
at getting that.
And
I think
I'd like to
they've
be
been waiting
armed with that data
waiting to
because-
get that out. So that'd be, so that's great.
Yeah, and I like to be armed with that data because as a council person, as a county resident, I will approach the dais at the county and say, hey, you know, what have you done for me? And we have to account for the city, and not that we are speaking for the county, but as a county, as all county residents at this table, I think it is our business and our concern to understand what that analysis or impact is. So, okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Appreciate you. That's great questions, great points. And I have, Madam Chair Hill, followed by Councilwoman Burrs, and then Councilman, Harvey. Okay, so Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quality services. You know, when we talk about what our constituents expect and the idea that the mayor has of being the best mid-sized city in the nation, and that there is an expectation of quality service. And I will say, I've explained to my constituents on a regular basis that the city is not Amazon. You know, we can't deliver in 2 days.
Right.
But nonetheless, quality services, As we went through the budget process and now as we consider an amendment, something that I am carefully considering is, are we providing quality services across the board? Are there opportunities for us to be better stewards of the investment of these dollars for people across the city? You know, if you all look at slide 30, the average homeowner annual tax bill by council district, you will see that District 2, it's interesting because District 6 has a higher
Right.
overall value of property. And yet, if you want to know who's paying for all of this, the people of District 2 are carrying a very heavy load. And, I mean, the delta is as much as $2,612 annually difference between the average of a homeowner's cost in District 2 versus other districts. So it's very real. You know, this is $360 a month at our current adjusted tax rate of 1.55. So, you know, some of the other presentations that we're going to be having, you know, they're listing out all of the different spending. And I know I personally am going to be looking at where are the services that I do not see fully actualized well in our city. Because to me, it's not just about how do we keep raising revenue, but how do we also improve what we're doing. Because if we have, you know, I think that in some things that the city has tried to do over time, we have diluted our resources in such a way that it's difficult to operate in an environment of excellence because we're too diluted. So, you know, I lean back on my school system experience where we had, I think we had 79 schools in Hamilton County when I started on the school board. To staff all of those well, maintain all of those buildings well, have an excellent leader in every building is exceptionally difficult. And the maintenance of all of those just compounds and compounds. And so I'm considering some of these things about what are we doing in Chattanooga? Are there places where we can combine resources? And we'll talk more about that this afternoon. But to me, it's not just one for the other. And I'm not here to just raise revenue and then turn around and tell my constituents, yeah, it's kind of just more of the same. And I will say that in '21, when we were brought this challenge about first responder pay, we were told, you know, the reason why we don't have a fully staffed police force is because we don't have matched up pay. And now it's 4 years later, and we're told the reason we don't have a fully staffed police department and fire department is because we don't have police and fire pay. I am not convinced that when we do this, that we will have a panacea that will fix all of our challenges related to traffic safety enforcement and the level of service expectation that our constituents want. So I definitely, when I see already that the average is $43.27 for a homeowner in District 2, and I know the 3 neighborhoods that will have to bear the highest burden are my 3 that have historically been the most affordable neighborhoods in my district. They are the ones that have seen more than double, far above 56% increase. And I think you all will see it's the same, and you know the neighborhoods, you've knocked the doors. Who's gonna feel it the most? And they've got to have the service on the flip side of it. So this is a tough one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilwoman Burrs.
So along those same lines, you know, getting police fully staffed, I agree with that comment that, you know, so it gets us fully staffed. What is that? What's the insurance?
Sure.
And then a year from now, what are we looking at? So that means if we raise it for this year, does that cover their pay for the next 4 years?
It does not.
Yeah, so I have a question about that. And then if we decide if we decide on an increase, then what's the insurance that it does get earmarked for exactly its intent, whatever, whatever that intent is?
Oh, well, in the same way that you guys fund specific, I mean, you guys are the appropriators.
Okay.
Right, and so the ordinance dictates how money is used. There's a little bit of, I guess, fungibility, but money for pay is money for pay.
Okay.
Money for compensation is money for compensation. So there's absolutely no alternative use for the money.
Okay.
Councilwoman Hurst?
Oh, thank you.
Okay. It's just so much information.
Thank you. I'm
yes.
done. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilman Harvey.
Thank you. Yeah, so one of my questions was is the 17.5 million solely for fire and police?
The $17.5 million figures is solely for fire and
Okay,
police.
nothing else included in that, just fire and police. Okay. If that were to go through, what would be the ideal starting pay for a police officer and a firefighter? Do y'all have that?
Oh, you would ask me that.
I know.
I have,
He's like, that's for next week.
so.
Okay, well, we can
We
discuss that
have
next
all
week,
of
that's
that
fine.
analysis, and yeah, if you guys could kind of bear with me on this, right? Like, when we get into fire and police working sessions next week, we're gonna do a walkthrough of both of their current budgets, and then we're gonna do a walkthrough of what we're trying to accomplish,
Okay.
and you're gonna see it in explicit detail. I'm so tempted to say the number, but I think I'm off somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm jumping the gun on that. One more question is, the $5 million that we put in the amendment in the past budget that we passed, is that the 5 million we talked about, that's right there? Is that in addition to the $5 million of growth, or is that the growth?
No. The 5 million that we set aside in our budget, remember, so we had higher contingency than previous years.
Oh, that's right, okay.
Yep, and so that is set aside money that is already in the door, or revenue that we know we're going to have, distinct from that incremental 5 million that we know we're going to have.
Okay. Is that 5 million going towards fire and police pay? So in theory, do we have $10 million already sitting there, so we need 7.5 million?
In theory.
Okay,
We just gotta find it.
okay. Right.
Great question. Listen, this is fantastic. I'm telling you what, it's probably one of the best education sessions because it's just so rich in information. We got Councilman Clark followed by Councilwoman Burris.
I have no
Okay,
questions.
and then we'll wrap it up with. I'm sorry, if Councilwoman O, did you have any questions or anything?
No, I'm good, Madam
All right.
Chair.
Thank you.
What time are we,
And then
what time are
we
you
will
wrapping?
wrap it up after, and I have a question at the end. So Councilwoman Clark.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to Chairwoman Hill's comments regarding quality service and just, the actuality of how we do that, right? And I'd be curious, sometimes when we make those comments, I don't really get to hear, the administration's ideas about that, because what's happening is that part of this hearing is to be educated to make a decision. But those decisions are recommended at the research and development of the administration, because we don't have the capacity to do that, you all do. So my question is, in reference, this is for you, Kevin, what are your thoughts and how you address the concerns is that if you're asking us to fill in these gaps by considering whatever, how do you address not doing more of the same, or what are your thoughts on that? Like, is that just a mute? I don't think it's mute, but how do you address that before we go into these decisions regarding rates or of this? Because I think it's valid, right? If the concern is quality of services and we're in essence popping the hood open, as I think Councilman Elliott described at one point, and we're looking, deep diving,
Yep.
what are you gonna do different to improve the quality? What's your plan for that?
So I think it's the right way to think about it. Mayor Kelly and the administration shares the desire to ensure that we are delivering not only effective and responsive government, which has been a theme of this administration, but also that we're delivering services at a level worthy of our residents, right? The kind of government services that our residents deserve, that are excellent. And I think that the administration would acknowledge that today, there are certainly areas where that isn't happening at a level that we would probably want to see collectively. But I would also push back and say that there are certainly areas in which it is happening, right? And so I think that what I do not concede is that it is a theme that we do not deliver excellent
Gotcha.
services. And I would say we are all, as members of Mayor Kelly's team and the mayor himself, we are happy to go in as much detail and get specific about certain areas and opportunities that you guys see. And we want to do that. And I think that, in the conversations that we have had with you guys in these settings, we are talking about that. And so I think that as we continue the conversation, I would encourage us to get specific about what exactly do you mean with a particular criticism or opportunity to do things a little bit better or differently. We are absolutely open to that. We continue to innovate year over year in terms of how we deliver services. But I also, and I'm sad that she walked out of the, not sad, she'll see this, or I'll say it again, but I wanted to respond to something that Chairwoman Hill said regarding this notion that last time, which I wasn't here by the way, it was pitched as we don't have a fully staffed police force because we don't have pay raises. We get the pay raises. We don't have a fully staffed police force. And I just want to say that when you think about, and we're going to talk about this afternoon, I think a little bit more, bodies of work, resourcing a department is more than money. Right, there's more to it than that, to delivering adequate police coverage and public safety on both the fire and police front, delivering adequate public works functionality. You can go on down the line. There's more to it than that, but there's certainly not less to it than that. And so if we know that we are facing another market threat because of our failure to maintain competitiveness, and we are seeing leading indicators, right, that people are leaving or pursuing other opportunities or choosing not to enter into our respective academies because of that indicator, we would be foolish not to respond to that and to say, well, we did it last time and it didn't pan out, because again, it's a function of a lot of inputs that determine the performance of a particular agency. And not to steal Chief Chambers' thunder, but I do think that we are, for next week, but we are seeing a change, a positive change at both police and fire, that is reflected in some numbers that he's going to share next week as it pertains to recruitment and the trajectory that we are on from a cultural perspective and a leadership perspective, and just a desirability of people wanting to be a part of what's going on at both fire and police. And I think that we need to think about it holistically. But to come back and just kind of reiterate my point to you, the administration wants to get specific about what it is that you guys would like to see differently in specific verticals, and we want to continue to collaborate and partner with you towards making that happen. But if we know that a limiting factor is resources, we need to address the resources.
May I ask a follow-up question quickly? So, and I agree, and I think you all are centric in addressing quality service, but what is the current apparatus within, or the tool within the mayor's office where you can monitor, do an analysis, and figure out like where the quality service issues are? Like how do you monitor that and measure that in each of your departments to say, hey, here's community development, there's a quality service issue from Councilman Elliott, but what are the tools that we currently have in place that monitors those?
Yeah.
That allows you all to see in a dashboard, like, well, this is a quality service issue. 311, for instance, I think is a major quality service issue that we hear on a continuous basis. So what are we doing to audit? Is there an office or a person that goes and say, I'm going to go to each office and figure out what the quality issue is, And do y'all keep that data?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah, and we can talk more about it. I don't think that this is the time to talk about it, but I will just say, at a high level, operationally, every one of our departments has a robust planning functionality, where at the beginning of a fiscal year, we look at the year ahead and we establish areas of priority focus from a performance perspective that we track against. We have performance metrics that we track on a regular basis, that we are constantly iterating, right? Because I think that one thing, none of this was happening, or very little of this was happening prior to Mayor Kelly coming on board, but early on in the administration, we stood up robust metrics, right? And we actually made many of those metrics public facing. One thing that we have learned since is that we're not always exactly tracking what matters. We're not tracking the right metrics. And so we are in the middle of a cycle right now of going back through and saying, hey, are we measuring the right things? And I think that one way to get at quality is by thinking about it from the customer's perspective, right? And so what are the things that the end user, and I think 311 is a great example, because, you know, we have this, not to get too much in the weeds, but we have this issue where, like, our residents receive notification via the app that says that a ticket is closed, when the thing that they are requesting to happen has not happened, and they're looking at it, so they send pictures. They're like, why is it saying it's closed? Well, there's explanation for that. We know that the thing is not resolved, and so we are retooling that